Welcome. My name's Nick from the Toy Box, and this is Nick and Company, the show where sometimes it's going to be Nick talking about the company, and sometimes it'll be Nick and Company. So, I'll have some people on, and I think that'll be good. But for starters, I think it's important to give a little background on how I got here, or why I even have a podcast in the first place, and that really comes down to the Toy Box. So I want to talk about the past, present, and future of the Toy Box, my toy store. So let's start with the past. I think that makes the most sense. The year is 1977. The Yankees won the World Series. Jimmy Carter is pardoning people who avoided the draft to Vietnam. The neutron bomb is invented. And all the while, a young man decides to open up a toy store in Mamaroneck, New York. Now, admittedly, the toy store is a little bit of a ghost online. It was painstaking to find any evidence of it existing before the year 2000. But this is a Ticketmaster. I don't know if this is a business card or a receipt or whatnot, but if you can read on it, it says that Ticketmaster is available, Record World, James Way Stores, and most importantly, Toy and Sports Warehouse. Now, if you talk to, people who have lived in Mamaroneck their whole lives, they will often talk about oh man, I remember when this store had a Ticketmaster, because people have great memories, fond memories of lining up to get tickets for concerts or whatnot. And that's because the original toy store that was on our property at 300 West Boston Post Road was a Toy and Sports Warehouse that opened in 1977. Now, from there, I'm not sure what year, admittedly. Like I said, it was a ghost online, so it wasn't exactly easy to find more information about it. But at some point in time, it did become a big top. Now, this sign and this photo is actually from the New Rochelle Big Top, which, if you look online, was much more famous, for lack of a better term. But I also love this shot of this pinball machine, because we actually happened to. Well, let me back up. When my brother and I bought the toy store, his girlfriend's father, essentially, his father-in-law, gifted us this pinball machine to put in the store, because he knew that we wanted to put a pinball machine in the store, put some arcade games in, something of the sort. Now, he gifted this to us having no idea that at one point in time, the toy box was in fact a big top. So this is an heirloom, quite sentimental in some respects. I mean, we got it working. It's since stopped working, but admittedly, it's probably something we would never part ways with. A lot of people have actually asked us if we'd sell it to them, and I'm not particularly interested, because I do think it plays such an interesting part in our history. And so let's fast forward. The year is 1995 or 96. Let's say 96 for consistency's sake. And the young man who had been running the toy store, unfortunately, was hospital. What would the word be? Ridden? I don't. He was bedridden in the hospital, and his best friend, who had experience in his family and in his life with running toy stores, actually offered on his behalf to run the store while he was in the hospital. Now, unfortunately, after some time, that original owner would pass away, and ask at some point in that, for who would become Steve. So the toy box would go from the toy box to Steve's toy box. He would ask Steve to take over and run it for him. So Steve took over in 1996, and he ran it until 2023. Yeah, 2023 when my brother and I bought it. So let's fast forward. We got the toy box. This is actually a classic shot. So this is what it looked like basically when we were looking at it. You know, it was covered in paint on the front windows. That's something that we stripped away. But it was just a classic toy store, and that's much of the ethos that we want to keep standing within it, right? So let's fast forward, as I was saying, but also kind of back up because I was talking about 2023. But let's go to the year 2020. I had just graduated college. I had, luckily, in my senior year and even my junior year, been working on some amazing creative products and projects with the likes of, my mentor at the time, who is a renowned perfume bottle designer. And, you know, luckily under his mentorship, I was able to work on projects with the likes of Bath and Body Works and Tory Burch, etc. And it was an amazing experience. But what's funny about all of that is the way that the beauty world, and in many respects the consumer packaged goods world, works as a whole is, you might work on a project in 2018 with the knowledge that it won't come out until 2021. So, I guess we're talking 2018, 2019. I'm working on projects that are in the works to come out in 2020 or 2021. And P.S., I graduate college, I come home, and I'm just applying for jobs. That's all I really care about at this point. I just want a job. I don't need much. I need something, right? So I have this great amount of experience in this industry, especially for my age. I had experience that many of the people my age did not have, and I was very lucky in that regard. However, because these projects were not slated to come out for another couple of years, they couldn't be shown on my resume due to, how would you say, NDAs and things of that nature. So, you got this 18-year-old kid, or no, not 18, 22-year-old kid, applying for jobs, and he's saying, oh man, I worked with so-and-so. And they're like, man, this guy's full of it. So I couldn't land a job to save my life. And one day my brother, who I would then go on, to buy the toy store with, he comes to me and he says, hey, I found this great firm. We should look into it. And it was a company called Milk. And the description of the company, like their company bio, said something to the effect of, Milk, the nutrient-rich beverage with the power to turn a baby calf into a 2,400-pound bull. Now, this immediately grabbed my attention. I was like, I'm all in. What is it? How do I apply? And he says to me, that's our company, and we're going to start it today. And that's, that sounds like, a made-up story. That's exactly how it went. Now, it would be a lot better if we could have actually gotten the name Milk. But unfortunately, or fortunately, there's a wonderful design firm that already has the name Milk. So we had to come up with something else. We were just saying things, we were just rattling off names. And I landed on Milk and Bowl. I just said it, Milk and Bowl. And at the time we were thinking that we might do marketing as well as design. So we kind of thought milk was the nutrients and, or milk was the nutrients marketing to run your business, and the bowl was the face, so that was the design, that was the marketing. We soon found out we weren't, we were not any good at marketing. We got better over time, but we dropped it pretty fast because it was what's the point of this, put your best foot forward kind of thing. And over the years, we've made, a decent living off of it, so we've produced, these are just a couple of them, but we've produced quite a few products over the years doing packaging design, brand development, things of that nature. And these are some pretty awesome projects that we were a part of over the years. And even one of these is our own personal product, the Scoopy Boy in the bottom left corner. So we've done a couple different products over the years ourselves, and it's been really fun. And that's kind of where all of this is. So now it's 2020, pandemic hits, the need for advertising or marketing and packaging in this new, like, predominantly online landscape is like bigger than ever. So we were really lucky. It was like a perfect storm, but we saw exponential growth for the first 2 years. I mean, we were doubling our revenue every year for the first 3 years. So, or 2, 3 years, something like that. But then, it started to plateau. The world went kind of back to normal, but we had lived very frugally during this time, and we had collected, kind of a decent stack of cash, and we were like sitting on it like a dragon with, like, the gold underneath. But we knew we didn't want to live in this online landscape. Like, as helpful as it had been, that wasn't like something that either one of us really wanted for ourselves. And part of that was, we could either grow the company, buy an office space, and now we're in the real world. Because at this point, we have employees and everything, but it's all fully remote. So, how do we kind of make that jump? How do we get an office space? Does it even make sense to get an office space? So we looked into a lot of things. The first thing we looked into was buying another design firm. But with the budget that we had allocated, the only design firms we could buy were like just as smoke and mirrors as ours was. Like, if I had walked away, yeah, we had a talented team, but with your creative director gone, there's kind of nothing you can do. So, all of that was smoke and mirrors, and we found the same for marketing companies, which, like, that was another great idea, was let's pair it with a marketing company, which made a lot of sense at the time. But once again, looking into it, nothing, at least within our budget, made any sense. So then we expanded the search. We essentially were like, all right, we have X amount of dollars. What can we buy for this? And, we saw this toy store, and admittedly, like, on paper, it sounded amazing, but we were like, we're not really going to buy a toy store. And this is November of 2023. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So this is November of 2023. And, my dad saw the listing, and he was like, just go look at it, And so we go over there, we meet Steve, and the place is awesome. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like my entire childhood coming back to me, of like running through toy stores and, just like looking around in awe and amazement. And then, PS, it all starts rushing back to me. And I remember, like, oh, wait, like, I was that weird kid, like, collecting vinyl figures in high school, and like I had an entire bookshelf dedicated to them because I was like obsessed with these blind pack figures. And that was probably 10 years before that industry really took off, like, that was just something that I was passionate about because I loved the art of it all. And I can remember, I never knew what I wanted to do when I grew up, but when asked my senior year of high school, I was like, I want to be a toy designer. And that's just like a weird coincidence. Like, I think I said that, and went out into the world, and I forgot about it the next day. Never once thought about it again, really. And then fast forward 10 years, and I have the opportunity to buy a toy store, and who knows what that might lead to, like later down the line, maybe I can design my own toys. So like, in a weird way, in a cosmic sort of way, it kind of felt like all roads were leading to this, which was like, who would have thought? And yeah, so we had enough money, at least for like a significant loan, to buy the place. And, the normal kind of runway for a business acquisition is like minimum 6 months. but oftentimes like a year or a year plus. Um, but Steve being, Steve's amazing because he is so himself. And he was like, dude, I'm tired. I want to quit. I want to be done. Um, After Christmas of 2023, I'm done one way or another. So he wanted us to take over um, literally less than a month from the moment I saw the store. And that's not a good runway. But, um, I just the way my brain works, like I can't focus on something for like if I think about something for too long, I just won't do it. I need to put it out of my head. I have to use naivety as a superpower because if I know what's on the other side of that door and it scares me, I'm not doing it. So it was kind of simple, It was like, all right, we're in. Screw it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Um, am I allowed to say screw it? I don't know. Um, but yeah, so we were just like, let's do this thing. Lawyers and stuff took some time, but by what was it, January 9th, 2024, we officially had bought in the toy box. Now, this is just cool, in my opinion, to like look at. This is like when we were just like coming up with ideas. This was probably December. I was shadowing Steve in the store trying to learn, soak up everything I could, Um, and this was something that I came up with. I had this like idea for, this was the palette I was picturing: browns and oranges and yellows. Like, if you can tell, I love orange and yellow. Um, but anyway, I wanted to like completely redo the store, have wood floors, beautiful wood shelves, like all of this, whatever. Um, and then my brother was like, dude, we don't have, like, we spent all of our money buying the store. We don't have any money to make changes that are like beyond something we can do ourselves. And so we kind of reeled it in a little bit and just went with like a classic redesign. So if we go back a little bit, you can see like this was the old school logo. It was like we just got rid of the drop shadow and kind of closed up some of the width of the holes. And then in my mind, toy box is one word. It's really not, but it kind of is. But I thought just in terms of like a logo type, like it made more sense. Just kind of toy box, one thing. Um, so we dropped Steve. We dropped, like, we weren't going to make it Nick. We weren't going to make it AJ. It's just toy box. And the way I see it, it's like you walk into that store and it is like floor to ceiling toys, colors everywhere, all of that. And so my thought was like, let's go with like clean white for the most part, like all of our branding, because let those colors kind of speak for themselves. Um, and that would kind of change over time. But that was my initial thinking, we don't need to pack it with color um, because, it already is. So one of the first things I did was, like build a Lego wall that covers the entire front desk. And I built it entirely out of white Legos because I just wanted this clean white finish to the store. It's not really possible, but that was the theory, right? Now, I want to talk about Toy Box Present. So, presently, our identity is something like this. We're on a clean white, it's not actually a Fiat, but it kind of feels like a Fiat. Um, and we're on the clean white car, bright yellow background. This was originally inspired by, um, the old school like VW ads. Like if you ever see those, like the one with the beetle that says lemon, it's just classic. So these were things that really meant a lot to me in terms of design, and I really wanted to bring them into the store, or at least into our brand identity. But the present of the toy store is like, the store is awesome. Brick and mortar is a lot of fun, interacting with the customers and all of that. But it can only do so much, like at the end of the day, I think it's something like 80 or 90% of all of our customers are in a less than 3 mile radius of the store. Um, And that's just a small sample size, you know? And in due time, yeah, we can get more people in. But the truth is, it's like, you know, compared to a lot of companies that are, you know, nationwide or even worldwide, like that's just not a, a big enough sample size. So, you know, if we really want to, you know, get this brand out there and really make it shine, we kind of need to think bigger. So, um, we've done some events to try to bring in local traffic, but now kind of talking about the future, you know, what we really want to do for the toy store includes our social media manifesto for 2025. Um, and so, along with the events that we have been doing, and we have some coming up, we have a bubble day on the last Sunday of June, so that'll be great. It's our first annual bubble day, and just so everyone knows, you know, all of our events take place on the last Sunday of the month, and it's after hours. So the store closes at 4. By 4:30, we're bumping with an event. So that's the idea. But our Toy Box social media manifesto follows a couple of ideas. One, this podcast. You know, we can do long form video through this podcast or long form audio, then take clips from it and make short form. Then we're also going to subsequently be starting an episodic series um, of kind of like a day in the life sort of thing at the toy store, just our different weird adventures. Because in many respects, that's like the biggest bummer of the last year. Is like I was so head down working, just trying to make the toy box successful in whatever small way I could, or you know, like the idea was stabilize. You know, if Steve did X amount in revenue, we need to do that at the very least to even prove that we should be here. Um, and we just wanted people to know us and like, you know, think that the store was as cool as we do. So that was the goal of last year. But in the process of doing that, I didn't document anything. I mean, like, I did so many silly things last year. I mean, like, I think it was like January, we have our, you know, I guess you would say like reopening event, right? And that's like maybe the last Saturday of the month. So we had like a month to get the whole store together. While I'm focused on that, I'm also trying to fill the store because we bought it, you know, basically empty, right? And so I'm trying to fill the store. And I'm not really thinking about it. And I accidentally overspend our budget for toys by $100,000. You know, like this is money we don't have. So there's like little moments like this where um, I just wish that we had recorded it because it was just crazy. Like there were things that we were doing that like made no sense, and we were just trying anything to get this to work. Um, and so that's our goal for this year. I want to take people through it. You know, like some of the fun things that are coming up or that we've, you know, done recently is like, um, we, so we really wanted to get like crane machines for the store, like claw machines. And we saw a Facebook Marketplace listing for some. And they were like half the price of, basically you could get two for the price it would cost to get one new. So I was like over the moon, really wanted it, scheduled a pickup for that following Saturday. It was Wednesday right now. I get a message from the person selling it and they're like, sorry, someone's coming to pick it up tomorrow. You're out. And I'm like, oh well, that kind of sucks. I was really looking forward to it. Um, and then they text me back the next day and they're like, they didn't show up. Can you come get these? And they were like, you have to be here by 4:30. P.S. They let me know at 3 p.m. and it was an hour and a half away with no traffic. So it was like, you know, we rented a truck as fast as possible. I had to scrounge together enough cash. Like it was just like everything about it made no sense. Um, and it's like moments like that that I really want to capture. Honestly, if not for not even necessarily for the entertainment. I mean, like these are the things that you kind of forget over time. You know, like that was a crazy moment that if if we didn't capture it, and frankly we kind of didn't, but if we didn't capture it, like there was no way my brother and I were going to remember that in like 2 months. Um So that was one. And then, this past weekend, I was like beyond um, grateful to actually be asked to throw the opening pitch at the Little League, the Larchmont Mamaroneck Little League All-Star game. So that was like a really cool moment, and I'm excited to share that, especially because I don't know how to pitch. I don't think I'd thrown a baseball in 20 years. So it was like, first, before I can even think of doing this, but by the way, I've already said yes, like I need to go out and learn how to pitch. So that's going to be a fun one. Um, and then beyond that, like the store is full of stories. We have an arcade machine in the back. It's called Kung Fu Master. And Kung Fu Master was the very first, I think they call it beat 'em up, like a beat 'em up arcade game. So it's like a really like staple part of video game history. And we just stumbled upon it because somebody wanted to get rid of it on like some auction site. We got it for $90. And now we have like a piece of video game history sitting in the store. And then like, a video that I'm really looking forward to doing is the Nerf Quiet Basketball has been taking, the world by storm. I remember before Nerf even got involved, there was like a ton of viral TikToks and things like that about like the quiet basketball, the quiet soccer ball. And I thought it was such hooey. And then I go to the toy convention this year, and it was like everyone had their own version of it. And I was like, okay, clearly something's going on here, and I need to like listen up. And then, P.S., Nerf, if you go back in their history, Nerf started as a ball brand. Like before, most people know them for the guns, but they started making, it was called the world's first indoor ball. And it was a foam ball, much in the way of the quiet basketball that they've now come out with. So I'm really excited. I want to make a video about like the comparison between those two, because, along with that Nerf ball, I mean, we're looking at like the toy industry is just a cycle. And frankly, this is something I want to talk about on another podcast. Like there's, you think about like Beyblades, which are seeing a resurgence. Beyblades are just tin tops from back in the day. And then even like the Bitsy has gone wild, and that's like a Tamagotchi or even a pet rock if you think about it. So it's like there's so many stories within the toy box itself that I'm excited to share with people. So my goal here, more than anything, with this toy box manifesto is like I want to tell good stories from start to finish, and I'm gonna suck at it at first. Like I don't know what I'm doing at all, but that's what's kind of fun about it. We have kind of a runway right now to like really make a go at making this store something and like tell the story of the store. And part of that story is all the little moments in between. So we're really excited about it. And so that's what's coming up. And, we're extremely excited for 2025. We're extremely excited to see what the year has in store for us. And this episode of this podcast is really just like the first step in a larger mission that we're doing here. And so I'm excited to continue it. And I don't know what next episode's going to be, but I can guarantee you it'll be fun. I might have a guest on. I haven't decided yet, but if nothing else, I'm gonna yap for 30 minutes and we'll go from there. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. This has been Nick from the Toy Box. I appreciate you checking in with Nick and Company, and I'll see you next month.